Hello YouTube family, thanks for joining me on my videos. If you like the videos, please give me a like. If you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to help the channel grow. Thanks for watching the videos. Sincerely, thanks for watching. Hello YouTube family, thanks for joining me on this video. For any of you that happen along this video, it's been quite a while since I've made one. This is my first video of 2022. I've been working a lot since September of last year. I've been working mostly six 10-hour days per week, and I've not had a lot of time, but I am going to attempt to get back onto a regular schedule, making videos, talking about the social and political stuff that's going on. For anybody that's new that happens along, you can, if you like the videos, please give it a like. You can subscribe to the channel to help the channel grow, and by all means, thanks for joining me today for this video. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. But let's get on with it. My first video ever was in 2021, and it was a recap of 2020, which was, I believe we can all agree, a rather abysmal year, no matter how you slice it. But so I figured my first video this year, I'll do a recap of 2021. I mean, the years don't seem to be getting that much better, unfortunately. But we had plenty of reason, and I mean, I am not somebody who's typically necessarily positive, hopeful for things coming down the road. I tend to be a bit of the guy that can see the one dark cloud in the otherwise clear sky. But there was a lot of reason, and I was hopeful. I was hopeful going into 2021. And the first big thing to talk about of 2021 was we were getting a new president. Donald Trump, who was objectively abysmal as president. I mean, hell, he was abysmal as a businessman. Most everything he touched went out of business. But he was a horrible president, really obnoxious, and people were overall miserable, which is why people showed up in such high numbers to make sure he did not get a second term. So moving into 2021, we had a new president coming in, Joe Biden. He's familiar to a lot of people. He was the vice president under Obama. He was in the Senate for decades. And I'm not a particular fan of Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden is very much historically a corrupt corporate Democrat who has taken the corrupt bribe money and done the bidding of his donors his whole career. But I was hopeful because of his age. Joe Biden won the presidency at nearly 80 years old. I was hoping he would come into 2021 and his presidency with the outlook of this may be my last hurrah in politics, and I'm not going to be so worried about the donors and the corrupt entities that influence politics so often. I'm going to just try and do what's best for the country. He added a lot of progressive rhetoric in his campaign, and I was hoping that the progressives in Congress, because we have more progressives now, they're mostly in the House, but we have more progressives now. Election after election, we're adding progressives, they're trickling in, And I was hoping they would be able to push Biden to have a more progressive platform as president. Unfortunately, that's not what we got. We got the same old corrupt Biden that's trying to keep his donors happy and the Democrat Party donors happy, and to make sure he doesn't rock the boat so the particularly wealthy interests in the country don't feel unnerved. But we had the hope of this new president. We started to see in late 2020, as Donald Trump had instructed his staff to not cooperate with the incoming administration. It was the first time in U.S. history we did not have a peaceful transfer of power from one president to the other. I mean, let's face it, in 2016, when Trump beat Hillary Clinton and became president, I'm sure Obama wasn't thrilled about having to do a pass down to Donald Trump, but he still did it because that's professionalism. He was president. He was coming to the end of his second term. He was out no matter what. Trump won the election, so he had to do that transfer of power to Trump, and he did it. All of the people in his administration cooperated with Trump to let them know what was going on and all the various pieces of the executive branch. And we didn't get that with Trump. Not only did we not get that with Trump, on January 6th, just 6 days into the new year, we had the insurrection at the Capitol. There was a group of, I would guess, at least a couple of thousand of the Trump cultists that broke into the Capitol. They busted through windows, doors. They beat up police officers. They were looking around for Democrat lawmakers and Republican lawmakers who they didn't see as sufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. You had people that were chanting "Hang Mike Pence." They built a gallows on the Capitol grounds. I mean, it was one of the darkest days in modern American history when we had these right-wing cultists literally trying to overthrow the government. They went there to stop the certification of the electoral votes on January 6th. That's what Pence was there for. That's what both houses of Congress were there for. It's mostly a ceremonial thing. It's tradition. And Trump had tried to get his vice president to not certify the electoral votes. The electoral votes had already been counted prior to that. They'd already gone through, made sure everything was in order with them. What they were doing on the 6th was a ceremonial thing that's done because it's in the Constitution. And Mike Pence wasn't going to try and play along. You had Republicans in the Senate, Republicans in the House, who planned to protest the votes. And even after the insurrection, some of them did it because they're trying to pander to that Republican base, those cultists, that they want to support them because you have some Republicans in Congress who plan on running for president in the future. Some of them are hoping to run, I'm sure, in 2024. They're hoping Trump doesn't run so they don't have to try and figure out whether to run against him or to wait for another 4 years or more. But we didn't have the peaceful transfer of power. We had Trump hold the rally where it was Trump and his staffers, his family, his sycophants gave these horribly violent rhetorical speeches that fired up this cult base and sent them marching to the Capitol for blood. And blood was drawn. Multiple people died on that day. A number of people were injured. They did around $30 million of damage to the Capitol building on January 6th. But nonetheless, come January 20th, Biden got sworn in. So early in the year, we had that dark moment. We got the new president. It was late. his people were getting information passed on to him late, but in the end, we had the transfer, and Trump was gone. But not forgotten. I mean, he's still been going around the country all through 2021. He was going around the country holding rallies because he makes money off of them. Trump's made around $200 to $300 million from doing these rallies and sucking more money out of his cult base. And we saw early on that Biden was going to be weak. Unfortunately, Biden is a weak president who is not willing to put his foot down and take control of his own party to get stuff done. I mean, the easiest lift with Biden coming into office was COVID stimulus. We were still coming out of the COVID winter in January. We were still deep in the COVID winter of December 2020, 2021. Where a massive amount of people died. Many, massive amounts of cases, lots of deaths. And the COVID numbers is one of the things that's argued. You know, people try to argue that there were more COVID deaths under Biden in 2021 than under Trump in 2020. They don't account for. Trump basically had 2 months in 2020 where there were no deaths accounted for. And Biden came into office on January 20th. Just between January the 1st and January 20th, that period of January 2021 prior to Biden getting sworn into office, there were 63,525 deaths. In 2020, there were 377,883 deaths. In 2021, there were 415,000 deaths. But if you subtract the deaths prior to Biden taking office, there was 351,475 deaths. So about 26,400 deaths less than what Trump had in 2020. So if you only count the time in 2021 when Biden was president, there were actually fewer deaths in the Biden administration than in the Trump administration. And it's not because Biden handled something particularly well. It's because by 2021, doctors and nurses, hospitals, they knew how to treat COVID better. So when people came in sick with COVID, they were able to get better treatments to them faster, and it cut down on the death rate. And along with that, another reason to be positive going into 2021 was that there were COVID vaccines that were released in December of 2020. We had, I believe, both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were released in December of 2020 prior to Biden taking office. And honestly, in Trump's last massive failure act as president, he had the opportunity to buy enough COVID vaccine doses to vaccinate the entire population. He did not do that. He bought 100 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine. And as you know, it's a 2-dose vaccine. It's a mRNA vaccine. You get 2 shots. And so 100 million doses, that will vaccinate 50 million people. Still a lot of people, but certainly not compared to the more than 330 million in the country. And one of the things Biden did early on in his presidency was he bought more vaccine doses, to the point where by spring, summer of 2021, anybody who wanted the vaccine could go get the vaccine for free. I won't give Biden a ton of credit for that because I believe any other president in that situation would have done the same thing. It only makes sense. And one of the reasons why COVID was so bad in 2021 was because once the Republicans realized Trump was out, Democrats were in, they started fear-mongering about the vaccine on right-wing media, Fox News, Newsmax, LAN, people online, all pushing conspiracy theories and ridiculous scaremongering about the vaccine to get Republican voters to not get the vaccine. And you had a lot of Republicans refuse to get the vaccine because of that. I mean, you had some of the craziest conspiracies coming out over the vaccine. People claiming that Bill Gates was putting microchips in the vaccine. The vaccine was going to kill everybody. It was going to be activated with 5G. 5G is active. It's not killing everybody that got the vaccine. I mean, you had people claiming they were being magnetized because they got the vaccine. It's utterly insane. The Republican Party has become this party of not just conspiracy theories, but some of the stupidest conspiracy theories you've ever heard. They're pushers of that, but they pushed out all the fear-mongering about the vaccine. It caused a lot of Republicans not to get it. Plus, you have a percentage of the population anyway who are anti-vax people because they believe vaccines cause autism, which has been debunked over and over again. But nonetheless, they still go that route. As of right now, 82.8% of the country has at least one dose of the vaccine, which seems pretty good. Over 80% of the country is at least half vaccinated. But what you have to consider is that with that, because our population is so large, that leaves 73 million, more than 73,600,000 people in this country who have not been vaccinated at all, not even one shot. And that's why COVID is not going away. Cases right now, as I speak, here in the early summer of 2022, COVID cases are on the rise. I mean, as I said, we have better treatment. We understand it better. It's not a novel virus anymore. We have a lot more studies that have been done. And so hospitals are more prepared. Doctors, nurses know how to treat it better. So it's not as deadly, but it's still deadly. There are still people dying. Yesterday, I think there was around 200 people that died from COVID. And because of the way the Republican Party operated, fear-mongering about the vaccine, that's probably going to be a new normal. Just dozens to a couple of hundred people dying per day of COVID. It's unfortunate because the Republican politicians, the right-wing media, they were pushing the fear-mongering for political reasons. They wanted COVID to hurt Biden and the Democrats as much as it hurt Trump. And the thing is, COVID didn't have to hurt Trump. He handled it so miserably, that's why it hurt Trump so bad. But here in 2022, we're still dealing with COVID. It's still an issue, and it hasn't gone away. Between when Biden was elected in November of 2020 and when he took office in January 2021, there were almost 200,000 deaths from COVID. Right now, there's been a little over a million deaths, 1,003,925 deaths from COVID. Preventable, we could have handled it better. So far in 2022, we've had over 211,000 deaths this year so far, halfway through the year. So we're still on pace for around 300 to 400,000 deaths this year from COVID. Insane. But that continued to be a issue in 2021, and as I said, it's still continuing to be an issue here in 2022. But hopefully at some point we can get beyond it. My hope was that Biden would be strong enough of a leader to mandate the vaccine. He wasn't. He's been weak throughout his time in office. I mean, as I was saying, the easiest lift was the pandemic relief. He talked about it, he campaigned on it, that he was going to give a $2,000 check to everybody. I'm fine with that. Then when he actually did it, it wasn't a $2,000 check, it was a $1,400 check. And you had people in places like Georgia who had worked their butts off to help Biden get elected. And part of what they were selling people was this $2,000 stimulus when he got elected. And now then they felt like they were misled, lying to people in Georgia. And they did a lot of work. They turned Georgia blue in 2020. I mean, you had the presidential election went to the Democrats, and both Senate seats were won by Democrats. And Biden, it took him still around 2 months just to get the COVID relief done. The easiest lift for him to do when he took office. And it still took him 2 months. But going into 2021, we could see that Biden was weak. Another issue that we had to deal with throughout 2021, we're still dealing with in 2022, and I can tell you it's only going to get worse globally. Immigration. Immigration was a problem, continues to be a problem. But here in the United States, Biden continued all the absolutely horrible policies that Trump had in effect. I mean, if you listen to Fox News, Newsmax, you're going to hear people saying that Biden has an open borders policy, which is absolutely absurd. Not only does he not have an open borders policy, he's just continued the same policies Trump Trump had in place. So if Biden has an open borders policy, then Trump did too. I mean, Biden's even continued the Title 42, which is claiming we can't allow people in the country because of COVID, which I don't think has been challenged in court, but I don't think that's even legal. Because our Constitution, most of the people trying to come here, most of these people stuck at our southern border are not illegal immigrants. And that's one of the things that drives me nuts. You hear people talk about it all the time, and they always say illegal. Illegal immigration, illegal immigration. Most of the people that are pulled up down there in Mexico in those tent cities on our border are from Central and South America, and they're asylum seekers. And it is built into our Constitution, completely legal, to come to the United States and seek asylum. That is a completely legal thing. That is not illegal immigration. You can, as an asylum seeker, cross the border into the United States. That's not illegal. And what those people do when they cross the border is they're looking for Border Patrol to turn themselves over in hopes of staying here. They're being turned away. Biden continued the stay in Mexico policy, so you have these tent cities just across our border in Mexico where these people who are tired, poor, weak, and desperate are sitting ducks for criminal elements to go through to rape, rob, pillage those tent cities. It's a humanitarian disaster just on the Mexico side of our southern border because of Biden's inability, unwillingness to address it. I mean, he just put Kamala Harris in charge. I can't see anything she's doing to fix any of the issues, and it's just more of a problem. But globally, immigration is a massive issue. I mean, the European Union in 2021 saw a 70% increase in immigration and asylum seekers. Around 84 million people globally have been forcibly displaced because of conflict, economic collapse, and climate change. And the civil unrest, the climate change, these factors that are driving people to go seek asylum in places like European countries and the United States is still going on. It's getting worse. Climate change is going to displace a massive amount of the global population. There's nearly 8 billion people on the planet. And we're talking about billions of people who are going to be displaced as climate change gets worse. But also in 2021, I'm sure plenty of you heard plenty or perhaps too much about supply chains. Supply chains were a major issue in 2021 because as we got more and more people vaccinated, more and more businesses started opening up. People started going out and doing more. Business started opening to higher capacities. And so that brought demand up for products and services. But the problem was in 2020, we had companies, not just in this country, around the world, completely shut down the supply chain, completely shut down manufacturing. You had companies that completely sold off their inventories. One of the clear examples of that was rental car companies. Rental car companies, when COVID was horrible in 2021, nobody was traveling, nobody was renting cars. So they sold off their inventory of rental cars to have capital on hand. In 2021, by midsummer, when you had people that felt comfortable to go out because they were vaccinated, they had 2 shots, people were traveling more. People were renting cars. You had car manufacturers that had plants shut down, parts that go into the cars, the nuts and bolts and pieces that they put the cars together, all of that had been shut down. So it all had to get started back up again. And car manufacturers were slow about pushing out cars. The rental car companies were slow to get inventory built back up. So rental cars were insanely pricey and really hard to get. I mean, here in Vegas, there was a period of time in 2021 where you couldn't get a rental car unless you were just lucky and somebody was turning in a rental car as you were trying to get one. And the supply chain issues is because of capitalism. I mean, you have, all through 2021, you had the right-wing media claiming that all these problems, inflation, supply chain issues, it's because of the socialist, communist Democrats. Not true. It's because of capitalism. Because the capitalist companies in this country had decided decades ago that they can immediately make more profit by outsourcing labor. So most of the manufacturing in this country got shut down, and American companies are manufacturing in Mexico and Brazil and Singapore, India, China, Hong Kong, wherever, Taiwan. And that's where the manufacturing's at. So along with all of this stuff having to get started back up, then you had stuff having to be shipped into the United States. I'm sure some of you saw video footage, photos of ships out at sea, just anchored, waiting to come into dock. One of the things we found out when stuff started getting back going again was we did not have enough dock space in this country. We don't have enough major dock space to bring in massive amounts of ships, to bring in massive amounts of products to unload. We don't have the manpower to unload it. And stuff started getting going again. You had these companies that operate at the docks expecting people to come back for the same low wages they had worked for before, and people were like, no, I'm not going to do that, because there was still the pandemic going on, still a lot of people dying. And the companies were eager to get people back to work because they could see the money that was available to be made, and they wanted to keep paying their workers low amounts of money. But we had major problems at the docks, major problems getting stuff manufactured and shipped, and so there were some products that weren't available. periodically times you'd try to go buy something that just didn't exist in this country. And we can address those issues. The federal government has the ability to require American corporations to manufacture a certain percentage of their product in the United States. The federal government, with the Commerce Clause and the Constitution, they can tell companies you've got to manufacture at least 25%, 30%, whatever, of your product in the United States. They can force companies that want to operate in the United States to do manufacturing in the United States. And if we had more manufacturing here, when there were problems like COVID and the shutdowns and the startups, if we had manufacturing in this country, it wouldn't have been as bad of a problem, because one of the things that compounded the shortage was the shipping factor, because everything's made overseas. And everybody shut down during COVID. They all had to start back up, and all of this supply chain stuff led to higher than normal inflation. If you, once again, listen to right-wing media, you're going to think inflation's off the charts. It's not. It's not really. It's up a bit, but not that much. One of the things that the greedy corporations, again, did in this country was to take advantage of the situation. There is higher inflation right now because of supply and demand. Supply high, demand short, prices are up. And they started price gouging. You can see it in looking at the profit margins. I mean, some people point to the overall profits. You've got record profits being made by American corporations right now. And someone could argue, well, if you sell more of your product, services, whatever, your profit's going to go up. But the thing with corporations right now is their profit margins are up. If companies were just increasing prices because of an increase in cost, their profit margins will be the same on their products. But they're increasing their prices above the cost increase to make that extra profit. That's why corporations are making such massive profits right now. And it's a mess. It's pricey for average working Americans. And so far, the political leaders aren't doing anything about it. Republicans aren't doing anything about it. They'll let Biden sink. They don't care. I mean, with them, it's about power. They want to attain power they used to have. So they're more than happy to let Biden sink. Biden keeps thinking somehow Republicans are going to become his friends and help him pass legislation. That ain't happening. And we're still going to have to deal with higher prices. I mean, even when the inflation goes back down, it's possible corporations will leave the prices high a bit longer and just taper it down after the costs have gone back down, just to squeeze out that extra profit. Another thing that happened in 2021, was the return of the Taliban. This was a massive black eye for the Biden administration. I already did a video talking about the fact that Joe Biden was basically the guy left standing when the music stopped playing. I mean, Biden has to accept the fact that he's going to be blamed primarily for our debacle in Afghanistan, not just the withdrawal, but our completely failed occupation of the country. I mean, we blew over $2 trillion in Afghanistan, and there's nothing to show for it. And I understand that Trump made the deal with the Taliban. In 2020, he made a deal with the Taliban. He released thousands of Taliban captives back to the Taliban, back to the fight in Afghanistan. And you had advisors saying that The military contractors did their job. They trained the Afghan defensive forces. Those defensive forces were trained, equipped, and would be able to defend Afghanistan from the rise of the Taliban. And as we saw, all of us on the news, not day after day, it only took 2 days for them to take the country back over. The Afghan defensive forces weren't ready for the U.S. troops to be gone. And we basically just pulled and ran. I mean, our own allies referred to this withdrawal as I made a note of it somewhere, but our own allies called the withdrawal called it imbecilic and a debacle. That's the allies of the U.S. I mean, we had allies in Afghanistan with us who were just left there. They didn't know we were leaving. They were as shocked as a lot of people, the Afghani people that helped us out. Biden called the withdrawal an extraordinary success, which is just as idiotic of a thing to do as George W. Bush's mission accomplished presentation on the aircraft carrier about the war against terrorism. I mean, he claimed to have mission accomplished all those years ago, early on in the war against terrorism. But Biden will have to take the blame. That's just the way it is. I mean, George W. Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden all bear responsibility. They were all president during our occupation of Afghanistan. They were all responsible. And Biden was vice president for 8 years under Obama. And so they all share blame, but the lion's share of the blame is going to be placed on Biden. He did a horrible job with the withdrawal. We have around 100 American citizens that were left stranded in Afghanistan. Around 300,000 Afghan people who were qualified for expedited visas got trapped in Afghanistan. I mean, people who risked their lives to help us, who are now stranded with the Taliban, who are going to be pissed at them because they helped us. I mean, over 20 years in Afghanistan, we spent over $2 trillion. What we got out of it was around 2,500 U.S. soldier deaths, around 4,000 U.S. civilian deaths, and over 170,000 Afghan civilian deaths. That's what we got out of it. What did the defense contractors get out of it? Billions of dollars. That's why we were there, and that's why it was always a bad decision. It was about money. You have defense contractors who pay politicians to keep these engagements going because the different defense contractors make money off of it. That's how they get their money. Billions and billions of dollars, and they don't even do their job. They didn't even properly train and prepare that Afghan defensive force to where they could stand their ground and keep the Taliban from taking back over. Another issue we had in 2021 was the civil war in Ethiopia. And you had, in 2019, Abiy Ahmed won the Nobel Peace Prize for brokering peace with Eritrea. After that, however, you ended up with fighting breaking out between the Abiy regime and the Tigray People's Liberation Front. And that fighting is going on all the way to today. It started last year. It's still going on. There have been around 2 million Ethiopians displaced because of the fighting. You have the Abiy Ahmed regime that he won the Nobel Peace Prize for brokering the peace deal with Eritrea. And now in this civil war, both sides, both the Tigray People Liberation Front and the Ahmad regime have engaged in war crimes. They've engaged in ethnic cleansing, massacres, gang rapes, and it's a massive mess, displacing millions of Ethiopians. That's one of the reasons for such a huge rise in asylum seekers in Europe, because from Africa, people can escape out and flee to Europe, asking for asylum in those countries. And like I said, stuff like this is going to get worse because of climate change. Climate change, you have brutal dictatorial regimes. All this stuff is going to cause these things to get worse. Another issue we had in 2021 was the erosion of global democracy. As I said before, the U.S. saw its first ever disruption in the peaceful transfer of power from one president to the next when Donald Trump refused to cooperate with the incoming Biden administration. We're supposed to be this shining example of democracy around the world, and we're failing at it. It's unfortunate, and it's catching Trump's refusal to do that. The Republican politicians in D.C. and in various states that supported him fighting against this peaceful transfer of power is shaking democracy, the foundations of democracy globally. In the United States was, for the first time ever, labeled a backsliding democracy in 2021. In India, you have Narendra Modi, who's the prime minister there in India, did a massive crackdown on critics, causing India to slide from a free country to a partially free country. And now India is listed as one of the most dangerous countries in the world for journalists because of the authoritarian nature of Modi, the prime minister. Brazil's president Bolsonaro in 2021 attacked his own country's elections, and critics are saying that democracy is dying in Brazil because of Bolsonaro. He's also a strongman. By the way, Narendra Modi and Bolsonaro, two people that Trump looked up to because they are authoritarian. And that's what Trump wanted to be. He wasn't able to accomplish it. You have fledgling democracies in the world. Myanmar, Chad, Mali, Guinea, and Sudan were all ousted in coups. These were countries that were struggling, trying to achieve democracy, and then military coups upset that in all those countries. We had Republican voters in our own country in interviews saying that they would be okay with throwing democracy out and installing an authoritarian regime here as long as the authoritarian was a Republican and was Trump. There is a Russian opposition leader that returned to Russia from Germany, Alexei Navalny. He was imprisoned once he returned to Germany because he was a critic of Putin, another authoritarian. another person Trump looked up to. In Belarus, the president there diverted a passenger jet so he could arrest a critic of his government. They diverted a passenger jet that wasn't destined for Belarus just so they could arrest a critic of the authoritarian Belarusian regime. China clamped down on Hong Kong, causing unrest. Cuba experienced the largest protests in its history, leading to thousands of arrests in 2021. So, we had massive failure in democracy. We had massive issues in democracy. There was a huge backslide. And I figure that's a sign for the future, that democracy is starting to die, because we were the massive champion of democracy, and now we have basically one party in this country that doesn't want it anymore, and that's the Republican Party. Another thing we had to deal with in 2021 was the failures of fighting climate change. The UN Secretary General called our climate situation a code red for humanity. Global leaders are big on talk, not very big on action. We saw increases in the number and intensity of wildfires, floods, hurricanes, all this stuff. Natural disasters are going to get worse as the planet warms up and the climate keeps this flux going on. Last year in 2021 here in Vegas, across the country we had a heat dome. But here in Vegas it's hot anyway in the summer. But it is insane when you have these heat domes that start happening. Climate change is going to continue to be a problem moving forward. Hopefully we'll start to get leaders who are willing to deal with it. Leaders who aren't being paid off by fossil fuel industry people and various corporations to ignore it. Another thing that we dealt with in 2021 was the Pandora Papers. The Pandora Papers is more than 12 million documents showing how the wealthy around the world use offshore accounts to hide money and avoid paying taxes. For most people who keep up with politics much, probably are already aware that rich people offshore their money. They put their money in various tax havens, hide it, so they can invest it and earn money tax-free. And so they can avoid paying taxes on the income so they don't have to pay income taxes on the full income they make. And it's not just politicians, or it's not just the wealthy businessmen in America, it's globally. You have oligarchs in Russia doing that, hiding their money in these offshore accounts. You have politicians in this country that do it. They're willing to hide their money to avoid taxes. And the areas that are willing to hide that money for them, they're also often willing to accommodate fraudsters and money launderers. It's a massive criminal organization, and the Pandora Papers was a massive journalistic investigation that included numerous journalists from numerous different publications, and they still haven't gone through all the documentation. I believe the Intercept this year is starting to really dig through it and put stuff out as they break it down on how they're moving the money, how they're hiding it, how they're not paying taxes, and all that. The Pandora Papers follows the Paradise Papers, the Panama Papers and Paradise Papers from 2016 and 2017. We've seen this before. It's not necessarily new. It's just the Pandora Papers is a massive trove of information about it. One of the problems with this avoidance of taxes is you have the middle class and the poor class that are having to make up for the taxes that the rich aren't paying. Also, you have governments having to borrow much larger amounts of money because of not getting the full taxes they're supposed to get from the corporations. And all these burdens are going to be put on you and me. They're not going to be put on Jeff Bezos unless we start getting more progressive politicians in D.C. It's going to continue the way it was. I mean, let's face it, Biden met with a group of billionaires while begging them for money, letting them know if he got elected, nothing would fundamentally change. That's the whole point. He wanted the wealthy donors to know, is that if you elect me, nothing is going to fundamentally change. And I tried to pull some of the positive news out from 2021, so everything's not just a downer here. In 2021, the EU vastly scaled up its renewable energy market. There were controversial fossil fuel projects that were scrapped in 2021, including the Keystone XL pipeline, which is good. Shell abandoned plans to extract from an oil field in Scotland. Portugal quit its use of coal altogether. On the medical front, you had a malaria vaccine that got approved in 2021. There's a breast cancer vaccine trial that was launched in 2021. And in 2021, for the first time, a paralyzed man was able to compose sentences on a computer by the computer reading his brain. It's a brain-reading computer that allowed a paralyzed man for the first time ever to compose sentences. So on the medical front, there was some success. On the social progress front, there's success. It's not all bad. Social progress is advancing in areas around the world. The Social Progress Index assesses nations on rights, access to education, quality of health care, personal safety, and quality of the environment. Of 167 countries that were assessed, 147 received a better score than they did a decade ago, the last time they were assessed. So out of 167, 147 of those scored better. There were only 4 countries out of those 167s that regressed. Unfortunately, the United States is one of them. We regressed. But the 4 countries that regressed on social progress were Brazil, Syria, South Sudan, and the United States. We continue to be getting on all the wrong lists. But we can look at progress that's happening around the world. It's still a positive. There was progress in other places. And just as I did on the first video of my channel, I'm going to end this video with the deaths of various people in 2021. And as time goes by, more and more prominent people die. It's just a fact of life. In January of 2021, we had Cloris Leachman die at the age of 94. She was prominently known for The Last Picture Show and Mary Tyler Moore Show. Hank Aaron, a Major League Baseball player nicknamed Hammer and Hank, passed away. He had 23 Major League Baseball seasons, 755 career home runs. He broke Babe Ruth's home run record. He's regarded as one of the best ever Major League Baseball players. Passed away at, I don't know if I said it, at the age of 86 in 2021. Joanne Rogers, prominently known as the wife of Mr. Rogers. His name was Fred Rogers, but Joanne was his wife. She passed away in 2021 at the age of 92. She was, after her husband Fred died, Mr. Rogers died, she continued to spread his message of kindness. She was also a pianist for over 40 years. Larry King passed away in January of 2021 at the age of 87. His name was Lawrence Harvey Ziegler. He had a long career in radio and television. He was prominently known as a person that interviewed people on the radio and television. During his career, he conducted over 50,000 interviews. That's insane, thinking about the amount of time that is to conduct 50,000 interviews. Phil Spector passed away at the age of 81. He was a record producer and songwriter. He was known, I believe, most prominently in the 60s and 70s as a very innovative record producer. His legacy was marred, however, by 2 trials and a murder conviction. But he passed away in 2021 in January. Randy Parton passed away at the age of 67. A pretty young age to die. He was a singer, songwriter, an actor, a businessman, but was probably best known as being the brother of Dolly Parton. Siegfried Fishbacher passed away at the age of 81. He was known as one half of the Siegfried and Roy Magic entertainment show here in Vegas. Both he and Roy were German-American performers, and they were known here as the most visited show in Vegas. Very famous here in Vegas. And lastly, in January, Tanya Roberts passed away at the age of 71. She was an actress, producer, and model. She was in the final season of the original Charlie's Angels television show. She was in the James Bond movie Of You to a Kill. Also, Sheena the Beastmaster. She was in that 70s show. Had a long career in acting, but passed away in her early 70s in January of last year. In February, we saw the death of Christopher Plummer. And I mean, there are a lot of people that die that's not in my video. I look at people that I've known. I mean, one of the ways I realize how old I'm getting is as I start to see entertainers I've been watching since I was young start to pass away from old age. But Christopher Plummer, he was a Canadian actor. He was probably most well known for the musical movie The Sound of Music, which co-starred Julie Andrews. And The Sound of Music, I'm assuming, is still my mom's favorite movie of all time. I believe my mother had a bit of a crush on Christopher Plummer when she was younger. But she really, really loved that movie. Dustin Diamond, an actor, passed away at the age of 44. He was a comedian actor, most well known as Screech from the TV show Saved by the Bell. Larry Flynt, at the age of 78, passed away. He was a businessman, well known, I'm assuming, for Hustler magazine, a pornographic magazine. But he was a staunch supporter of the First Amendment, freedom of expression. One of the things that attracted my attention to what Larry Flynt does is during the impeachment stuff in the 90s with Clinton. Originally, if you paid attention to that stuff back then, the Republicans were harping on the infidelity issue with Clinton, saying that it's unbecoming of the office of the president to be unfaithful to the First Lady. They were attacking Bill Clinton on the unfaithfulness issue, and Larry Flynt turned around and ran a full-page ad in the USA Today offering $1 million to any woman who can produce evidence that she had sex with a married Republican member of Congress. And I believe Flynt said he had 26 women produce evidence that he paid out. He paid out $26 million. During all that mess, you saw Newt Gingrich stepped down from being Speaker of the House. Robert Livingston, Bob Livingston, whatever you want to call him, took the job as Speaker of the House. Turns out he was one of the men that that more than one woman produced evidence that she had had sex with Bob Livingston, and that came out, and then he decided to step down. He gave this political speech, grandstanding, saying, well, I'm doing what I believe the president should do. I'm stepping down from office. Completely ignoring the fact that he knew he cheated before he took the office. So he wasn't making some moral stand. He was just trying to politicize the whole issue. And also, February of 2021, Rush Limbaugh, at the age of 70, passed away. He was a radio and television conservative political commentator, and he is among the most highly compensated figures in radio history. If I had to guess, I would guess Howard Stern and Rush Limbaugh are probably the two highest paid radio personalities ever in the history of radio. But Limbaugh had a massive audience, and I believe he died of cancer in February. But he was 70. In April of 2021, we had the death of DMX, otherwise known as Earl Simmons. He passed away at the age of 50. He was a rapper and actor. He sold over 74 million records worldwide in his rap career. Very famous. Also, you had Jim Steinman in the music industry, passed away in April of 2021 at the age of 73. He was a composer, lyricist, and record producer. He was responsible for songs like Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart, Air Supply's Making Love Out of Nothing at All, and Meatloaf's I'd Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That. Very prominent figure in American recording history. And in May, we saw the deaths of B.J. Thomas. He passed away at 78. He was a singer. Some of his popular hits are Hooked on a Feeling, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, Another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song. All of those very famous songs. Charles Grodin, at the age of 86, passed away. He was an actor, comedian, author, and television talk show host. He had notable roles in movies like Rosemary's Baby, Heartbreak Kid, King Kong, the 1970s King Kong, not the Jack Black newer King Kong, and a movie called Midnight Run, which is what I remember him most for. I think I was in high school, maybe college age. I think I was in high school when Midnight Run came out. I believe it was an 80s movie. Very funny. Very good movie. You had Gavin Mcleod, who passed away at the age of 90. He's an actor, most known for being on the Love Boat TV show and also the Mary Tyler Moore TV show. Samuel E. Wright, at the age of 74, passed away. He was an actor and singer, and best known as the voice of Sebastian from Disney's The Little Mermaid cartoon. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2021. Tawny Katan passed away at the age of 59, a very young death there as well. She was an actress and model, and I remember her most from the White Snake video, Here I Go Again, but she was in numerous music videos. I believe she was in a relationship with David Coverdale, the lead singer of White Snake, for a while. She passed away also in May of 2021. In June of 2021, you had Clarence Williams III. He's an actor, most known for the Mod Squad. Johnny Solinger passed away at the age of 55. Clarence Williams III passed away at the age of 81. Johnny Solinger passed away at the age of 55. He was a singer. Probably most well known as the lead singer of the band Skid Row. I remember Skid Row from when I was younger. I don't know if they're around today, but their lead singer died in June of 2021 at a rather young age, 55. Stuart Damon, at the age of 84, passed away. His real name was Stuart Zonis. He was an actor, best known as Alan Quatermain from the soap opera General Hospital. I don't know who Alan Quatermain is, but I know when I was a child, my mother was an avid watcher of General Hospital. So most likely she knows who Alan Quatermain is, as do I'm sure plenty of other people, because that was, I believe, a very popular soap opera, and I don't even know if it's still on today. I assume it probably is. Soap operas, I don't know if they ever end. In July, you had Des Bismarcky, another young death at the age of 57. His real name was Marcel Theo Hall. He was a rapper, DJ, and record producer. He was known as the Clown Prince of hip-hop. One of his really, really popular songs from, again, when I was around high school age, was titled Just a Friend. Charlie Robinson, at the age of 75, passed away. He was an actor. He acted in stage, film, and television, but I knew him as Mac from Night Court. I assume I've watched every episode of Night Court at least once, possibly twice, probably some of them 3 or 4 times. I was an avid watcher of Night Court, but Charlie Robinson was Mac from Night Court. You had Jeff LaBar, who passed away at the age of 58. He was a guitarist for Cinderella. Richard Donner passed away at the age of 91, a very famous filmmaker. He's among one of the most successful filmmakers of what's known as the New Hollywood era. Some of his notable works are The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Fugitive, The Omen, Superman, the original Christopher Reeve Superman movies, The Goonies, Scrooged, Lethal Weapon. Just a massive amount of famous movies there. And then you had Robert Downey Sr. at the age of 85 pass away. He was a filmmaker and actor, but probably in modern times best known as the father of Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man, Sherlock Holmes, phenomenally talented actor, Robert Downey Jr. In August, I just have one death that I chronicled there, and that was the death of Charlie Watts at the age of 80. He's a musician, and he was a very long-time drummer for the Rolling Stones. Very prominent band. I'm sure plenty of people know who Charlie Watts was. In September, again, one death, but it was a well-known Canadian comedian, actor, and writer. He was a writer and performer on Saturday Night Live. I'm sure plenty of people recognize Norm Macdonald. In October, you had another singular death that I've chronicled, and that is Peter Scolari. He passed away at the age of 66. Best known for being on the shows Newhart and Bosom Buddies. If you're my age, you know what Newhart and Bosom Buddies was. If you're rather young, you may not know what those two TV shows were. And in December, the last month of the year, you had Peter Scolari, who passed away at the age of 66. Or Christian, not Scolari, it's Jason Hitch, who passed away at the age of 45. And he was on a reality TV show called 90 Day Fiancé. I've got to admit, I'm not a reality TV show watcher. I'm certainly not a reality TV show buff. I didn't know who Jason Hitch was, but it seems absurd that he passed away at the age of 45. That's a insanely young death. I don't know how famous he was. I assume decently famous, since numerous publications talked about his passing. And then, as if to give us the big finger on the way out, on the last day of the year, December 31st, 2021, Betty White passed away. Betty White was an actress comedian. She was well known for the TV show The Golden Girls. Again, if you're my age, you probably watched The Golden Girls. If you're younger, you may not have never seen it. But you've seen Betty White, because she's still been prominent on television even in the last few years. She was known as the First Lady of Television. Her career spanned over 7 decades, which is insane. She's the Guinness World Record holder for the longest TV career by an entertainer. Betty White, at the age of 99, passed away December 31st, 3 weeks prior to her 100th birthday. And they were planning a TV special to celebrate her 100th birthday. And 2021 couldn't even give us that. So, I mean, there you are. That's a bit of a rundown of 2021. Just a review of the year. And as I said, the years don't seem to be getting better. There's certain problems we're not addressing, we're not fixing. And as long as we continue to not fix those problems and address those problems, I see our situation getting worse. But the years don't seem to be improving that much. Hopefully, I'll cross my fingers with you. I'll try and be hopeful. Hopefully next year will be better. Hopefully this year can end on a very positive note. Lately, it's not looking very positive. But I'm going to try and stay upbeat. Again, give me a like, give me a subscribe to the channel, and I will try to get back onto a regular posting schedule. There's a lot going on, a lot to talk about, and I hope some of you will join me as I go through that. But anyway, for anybody who's continued watching through all this is a very long video. Thank you very much, and by all means, have a great day.